Co-chairs, at the outset, I wish you and all colleagues a happy, peaceful, and prosperous New Year. I would like to align my position with the statements delivered by St. Vincent and the Grenadines on behalf of L69 and by Germany on behalf of G4. I will make additional comments in my national capacity. 2025 marks 80 years of the United Nations. Hence, as the first IGN plenary of 2025, today's discussion is significant and symbolic. Rewinding to 1945, the UN was founded by 51 member states. The architecture was reflective of the outcomes of one of the monumental events of the previous century. In these 80 years, the membership of the United Nations has almost increased 4 times, but the architecture of the permanent membership of the Security Council remains the same. We are in a multipolar world. The Security Council does not reflect the contemporary realities of today. These 80 years have witnessed many significant events. In recent times, we saw a pandemic that affected all of humanity. A global health crisis is a Security Council matter, where the memories of the suffering and loss of lives in the global south caused due to lack of availability of vaccines during COVID is still fresh in our memories. We see ensuing conflicts that question the UN's relevance and the UN Security Council's primary mandate of maintenance of international peace and security. It is in this context, Veto, as one of the 5 clusters under the mandate of the IGN as per Resolution 62/557, needs to be looked at. Veto has been used on more than 200 resolutions and almost 300 times by 5 member states. Some of these vetoes in the past were cast to block the membership of significant participants in the multilateral system, including, ironically, the countries of the co-chairs, Austria and Kuwait, besides Vietnam, Ireland, Nepal, and Mauritania. Ironically, the veto on peace and security matters and proxy wars impinge upon the peace and security mandate of the UN Security Council itself. There is also the subterranean architecture of subsidiary bodies and their working methods, where the unwritten rule of consensus can block or hold any proposal. The argument of consensus has been harnessed as a disguised de facto veto. This has unfortunately crept into democratic negotiation platforms like the IGN. Here we are 16 years later after the inception of the IGN with no outcomes to show. India has a principled position on veto which is very similar to the common African position. As long as a veto exists, it must be held by all permanent members as a matter of fairness and justice. There are indeed many schools of thoughts on reining in the veto. While my delegation agrees with many of those arguments, we firmly believe that a piecemeal approach will not help in bringing about reform. I would like to reiterate what I said earlier in November last year. The veto initiative of 2022 was considered a harbinger of change, making the Security Council more accountable to the General Assembly. However, statistically speaking, since the adoption of the veto initiative in April 22, the veto has been exercised on 18 occasions already, 4 times in 22 itself, 6 times last year, 6 times in 23, and 8 times in 2024, whereas it was used only 3 times in 2020 and once in 2021. Piecemeal approaches, however well-intentioned, fail to work during difficult times. We need to move forward on all the 5 clusters. We need to update the framework document of 2015, where countries had given their suggestions under the 5 clusters. Text-based negotiations is the most democratic and time-tested way forward, and it should commence at the earliest. These are to be taken forward in a time-bound manner in order to achieve real reform. India will continue to support all efforts that are aimed at realizing meaningful reform. Thank you, co-chairs.